The studio lights burned hotter than usual as Mark Wahlberg took his seat across from George Stephanopoulos, the familiar morning show calm already trembling at the edges. From the moment Mark adjusted his jacket and flashed a quick, practiced smile toward the audience, something felt slightly off. He was used to live television, late-night jokes, polished interviews, controlled narratives, but there was a tightness in his posture that hinted this would not be another breezy promotional stop. George, composed as ever, shuffled his notes with the efficiency of someone who had done this thousands of times, his tone warm, his questions carefully framed. The opening minutes flowed smoothly enough. Talk of Mark's latest film, his disciplined morning routines, a laugh about waking up before dawn to make it to the studio. The audience responded on cue, applause landing exactly where it was expected. But beneath the surface, tension was already building. When George pivoted the conversation toward Mark's recent comments in an interview, remarks that had stirred debate about Hollywood, accountability, and public criticism, the atmosphere shifted. George's voice remained even, almost conversational, but the question was sharper, more pointed. Mark's smile lingered for half a second too long before fading. He leaned back, then forward, as if weighing how much of himself he wanted to reveal at 8:17 a.m. on live television. He answered carefully at first, choosing words that sounded diplomatic but carried an unmistakable edge, emphasizing personal responsibility and pushing back against what he called drive-by outrage. George nodded, listening, then followed up with another question, gently but persistently pressing on the implications of Mark's words. It was subtle, the way seasoned interviewers escalate, one step closer each time, never rushing, never raising their voice. Mark's jaw tightened. He clasped his hands together, knuckles whitening slightly, and glanced briefly toward the audience as if searching for an anchor. The studio, usually buzzing with an easygoing energy, grew quieter. Even the crew seemed to sense it, movements slowing, eyes flicking between the two men. Mark responded again, this time more forcefully. His Boston accent grew thicker, his sentences shorter. He spoke about being misunderstood, about working his way up without shortcuts, about how people outside the industry loved to judge without context. George interjected, not aggressively, but enough to redirect the point. That interruption landed like a spark on dry wood. Mark stopped mid-thought, eyebrows lifting in disbelief, then continued, his voice now unmistakably firm. The audience shifted in their seats. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the crowd, quickly dying out when it became clear this wasn't a bit. The cameras stayed tight on their faces, capturing every flicker of irritation. Mark gestured with one hand now, controlled but emphatic, while George maintained his trademark composure, head tilted slightly, eyes intent. He challenged Mark's framing, referencing reactions from critics and fans, framing the discussion as a broader cultural conversation rather than a personal attack. That distinction, however carefully made, didn't seem to land. Mark leaned in closer, shoulders squared, and spoke about feeling boxed into narratives that ignored growth and accountability. His words came faster, overlapping slightly with George's attempts to clarify. The tension was no longer subtle. It hung heavy, thick enough to feel through the screen. Somewhere off camera, a producer shifted, whispering into a headset. The floor manager hovered just beyond the edge of the set, ready if things went too far. George tried to ease the moment, softening his tone, suggesting they agree to disagree. But Mark wasn't finished. He spoke about respect for the work, for personal evolution, for not being reduced to headlines. His eyes flashed, not with anger alone, but with frustration that had clearly been simmering long before he sat down in that chair. George, sensing the interview slipping away, pushed once more, asking whether public figures didn't have a responsibility to address past actions openly and consistently. It was a fair question, delivered calmly, but it struck a nerve. Mark exhaled sharply, a sound picked up clearly by his microphone. He shook his head, lips pressed together for a beat, then responded with a bluntness that cut through the morning show polish. He spoke about limits, about being human, about not owing every moment of his life to endless scrutiny. The audience was silent now, no applause, no laughter, just the low hum of studio equipment and two strong personalities locked in a standoff. Time seemed to stretch. What was meant to be a short segment had ballooned into something else entirely, something raw and unpredictable. Mark glanced briefly toward the cameras, then back to George, as if realizing how many people were watching this unfold in real time. The realization didn't calm him, if anything, it seemed to solidify his resolve. He straightened in his chair, voice steady but unmistakably heated, and made it clear he felt the conversation had crossed from discussion into provocation. George attempted to steer them back, offering a diplomatic bridge, but the rhythm was gone. The easy cadence of morning television had fractured, replaced by clipped exchanges and palpable discomfort. In the control room, decisions were being made in seconds, whether to cut to commercial, whether to let it play out, whether stepping in would make things worse. On set, Mark's foot tapped once against the floor, a small but telling sign of agitation. He finished his thought with a final, emphatic sentence and leaned back, arms crossing, signaling he had said his piece. For a split second, no one spoke. The silence was louder than any argument, and everyone felt it, the hosts, the crew, the audience, and millions of viewers at home. The interview, intended as a promotional stop, had transformed into something far more volatile, and it was clear that whatever happened next would not be easily forgotten. By the time the silence broke, it was already too late to salvage the moment. George cleared his throat and offered a measured response, his voice calm but firm, attempting to reassert control of the conversation. He thanked Mark for sharing his perspective and suggested they move on to the film itself, a lifeline back to safer territory. But Mark didn't uncross his arms. He tilted his head slightly, eyes narrowing, and gave a short, humorless laugh that echoed awkwardly through the studio. It was the kind of sound that signaled a line had been crossed, not dramatically, but decisively. Mark leaned forward again, his chair scraping faintly against the floor, the microphone catching every movement. He said he'd come on the show to talk about his work, not to be cornered into a debate he felt was framed to provoke rather than understand. His words were controlled, but the heat beneath them was unmistakable. George responded by emphasizing journalistic responsibility, his tone still composed, but now edged with defensiveness. He explained that the questions were fair, that public conversation didn't stop just because the hour was early. The exchange no longer felt like an interview, it felt like two men defending principles that refused to coexist in the same space. The audience sat frozen, unsure whether to react. A few people exchanged glances, sensing they were witnessing something that would be replayed and dissected for days. Off camera, a producer raised a hand, signaling a possible cut to commercial. The floor manager stepped closer, visible now at the edge of the frame. Mark noticed. His eyes flicked toward them, then back to George. That glance seemed to seal his decision. He shook his head slowly, as if disappointed rather than furious, and spoke one last time, saying he wasn't interested in continuing a conversation that felt, to him, fundamentally disrespectful. George attempted to interject, offering a conciliatory phrase, but Mark was already standing. The sudden movement jolted the set. His chair tipped back slightly before settling, and the microphone cable tugged against his jacket. The cameras hesitated for a fraction of a second, long enough to capture the rawness of the moment before instinct kicked in. Mark removed his mic with a practiced motion, setting it down on the table between them. The gesture was quiet, almost polite, but its message was unmistakable. He said something under his breath, not fully audible, then turned away from the desk. As he stepped off the set, the studio erupted into hushed chaos. The audience murmured, a low wave of disbelief rolling through the room. George remained seated, hands folded, his expression a careful mask of professionalism, though the tension showed in the tightness around his eyes. He addressed the camera directly, offering a brief, composed transition, thanking viewers for their patience as they went to commercial. The screen cut, but inside the studio, the energy was anything but calm. Behind the scenes, Mark was met by producers and staff, voices low but urgent. Some attempted to smooth things over, others focused solely on logistics, guiding him toward the exit. Mark walked briskly, shoulders squared, saying little, his expression set in a way that suggested this wasn't impulsive, it was a boundary drawn. Meanwhile, in the control room, producers replayed the last few minutes, already aware they had just captured a moment that would dominate headlines and social feeds before the show even wrapped. When the broadcast returned, the tone had shifted noticeably. George spoke carefully, acknowledging that live television could be unpredictable and reiterating the show's commitment to open conversation. He avoided assigning blame, but the absence at the interview desk was impossible to ignore. Viewers at home sensed it immediately. Clips of the walk-off began circulating online within minutes, shared with captions ranging from shocked to triumphant to critical. Speculation filled the gaps left by the abrupt ending. Who pushed too far? Was it planned? Would there be fallout? By the time Good Morning America signed off for the day, the incident had already taken on a life of its own. Entertainment outlets scrambled to book panels and commentators. Social media timelines split into camps, some praising Mark for standing his ground, others accusing him of overreacting. Media analysts dissected George's questions frame by frame, while fans replayed Mark's body language, searching for the exact moment the situation became irreversible. Hashtags trended. Think pieces drafted themselves in real time. Later that afternoon, statements began to trickle out, carefully worded, diplomatic, non-committal. Representatives emphasized mutual respect, the challenges of live interviews, the importance of dialogue. But the footage spoke louder than any press release. What viewers remembered wasn't the nuance, it was the image of a Hollywood star standing up, unhooking his mic, and walking away from one of the most controlled stages in morning television. For Mark, the moment lingered. Sources close to him described a mix of frustration and relief, as if saying out loud what he'd been holding back had come at a cost he was willing to pay. For George and the show, it became a reminder of the delicate balance between tough questions and the limits of live broadcast. And for the audience, it was a jolt, proof that even in a world of rehearsed soundbites and polished smiles, real emotion can still break through, unscripted and undeniable. Days later, the clip continued to resurface, reshared with new commentary, new angles, new interpretations. The fiery argument became shorthand for a larger conversation about media, celebrity, and control. And long after the studio lights cooled and the chairs were reset for the next guest, the moment remained etched in public memory, a brief, volatile collision that transformed an ordinary morning show into an unforgettable live television reckoning.